A future king named Bertie, the tragedy of Prince John, the most fabulous royal of the generation. Everyone knows the British royal family as they are today, but what did they look like 100 years ago? George V may have been a king firmly tied to the Victorian era, but he led his family into a very different new century. Ascending to the throne when his father Edward VII died in 1910, George reigned during the First World War, which incidentally was fought against his first cousin, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany. Another first cousin, Nicholas II of Russia, who was killed by Bolsheviks in 1918, looked like he could have been George's twin. George V had served in the Royal Navy for 15 years in his youth, and he loved wearing uniforms, naval or otherwise. And in 1920, the Navy made a big mistake of changing a small detail on their uniform without asking the king. The gold lace stripes worn on the cuffs of an admiral that denote one's rank were made slightly thinner. That may not sound like much, but George wasn't having it. He refused to wear the new stripes and made sure no one in the royal family did either, something that holds to this day. If you ever see one of the current royals in an admiral's uniform, they will always have thicker stripes than anyone else. But hey, that's the royal family for you. Despite presiding over a monarchy affected by war, communism, fascism, and the decline of an empire, George V lived to the respectable age of 58 and died in 1936. Famously, his doctor euthanized him on his deathbed with a mixture of morphine and cocaine so that the king's death could be announced in the morning newspapers rather than the less respected evening journals. Princess Victoria Mary of Teck married the future George V in 1893. The year before, she had been engaged to his older brother Prince Albert Victor, but he died before they could be wed. So just like any other family, the decision was made to treat Mary like a hand-me-down and have her marry the next brother in line, George. Mary is smart, smarter than her husband in fact, but they were both relatively reserved people. As historian Hugo Vickers explains, she did look austere. Underneath it all, she had a good sense of humor, but she was quite shy. But Mary didn't let that shyness keep her from participating in the events required of the royal family. During World War I, a younger royal complained that they were tired and hated visiting hospitals. Mary informed her relative, "You are a member of the British royal family. We are never tired, and we all love hospitals." In the 1920s, the Prince of Wales was George V's eldest son, whom the family called David. However, he would go down in history as Edward VIII, the king who abdicated the throne to marry the twice-divorced American Wallis Simpson. After his abdication, Edward was known as the Duke of Windsor. Edward was perhaps one of the most fashionable members of the royal family, and one thing that comes through in contemporaries' comments about him was just how slick he was. An American journalist once wrote of him, "He's an arbiter of men's fashions, a fearless horseman, tireless dancer, idol of bachelors, dream of spinsters." Alexander Larman, author of The Crown in Crisis, Countdown to the Abdication, has said that Edward was an accomplished public speaker who genuinely enjoyed being loved by ordinary people. It wasn't all good, though. Larman adds, "Edward was a consummate performer whose charm, charisma, and good looks could not disguise the vacancy at his core." Gore Vidal once wrote that Edward, quote, "always had something of riveting stupidity to say on any subject." After a brush with notoriety during World War II thanks to his association with various high-ranking Nazis, Edward and Simpson retired to France and lived a life of relative obscurity. Edward died in 1972. Called Bertie by his family, Albert, Duke of York, would eventually become King George VI in 1936 after his brother abdicated the throne. By that point, Albert was father to Princess Elizabeth, who would go on to become queen herself. While Albert was the second son of the family, he and his older brother Edward, Prince of Wales, could not have been more different. Alexander Larman tells Vanity Fair, "Albert was a far less demonstrative man than his brother, and often sought the advice and counsel of father figures rather than trusting his own judgment. Bertie disliked appearing in public and found any kind of public utterance somewhere between a chore and an ordeal, thanks to his debilitating stammer."
I'm sure that we are all happy to feel.
Unlike his brother's flashy friends and mistresses, Albert fell in love with the daughter of a Scottish aristocrat, Lady Elizabeth Bowles-Lyon. Larman says, "The importance of Elizabeth in his life cannot be overstated." In a piece discussing the 6 children of George V and Queen Mary, the Times opines that, quote, "the middle 2 can be a bit forgettable. One of those 2 was Princess Mary. This is a shame, however, because her life was actually kind of amazing. For one, she was no-nonsense and highly intelligent. Her brother Edward, the Prince of Wales, is alleged to have claimed that she, as the cleverer sibling, was better suited to the throne. Mary was 17 when World War I broke out, and she immediately got to work supporting the troops. She organized a Christmas gift for every single one, and as a 21st birthday present, she told her father she wanted him to work in a hospital helping the wounded. After the war, Mary didn't slow down and was known to be one of the hardest workers in the whole family. She became Chancellor of the University of Leeds and was the first woman to be an honorary general of the British Army. But the only thing that mattered at the time was that the tomboyish Mary reached her mid-20s with no husband. In 1922, she married Viscount Lascelles, who was 15 years older. Rumor has it that she was pressured into her marriage. As a child, Prince Henry had a laundry list of physical ailments. He had to wear splints to fix his knock-knees, he lisped, he was constantly sick, and he was generally small and frail. Despite this, he managed to live a very energetic life. Amazingly, Henry was the first son of an English monarch ever to go to school instead of being tutored at home. After attending prep school, he studied at Eton College, after which he enrolled at the Military Academy Sandhurst in 1919. 2 years later, Henry enlisted in the British Army. He was also quite the athlete and enjoyed, among other things, cricket, running, tennis, and polo. There was a darker side to Henry, though. Even at the time, he was noted as an alcoholic. He also allegedly had an affair with a married woman, Bertha Markham, which resulted in Henry paying her hush money until she died. As the story goes, King George frequently tried to keep his son busy so he wouldn't have time to disgrace himself. By and large, he failed. If there's any member of the Windsors who can beat out Edward for being fashionable, it was his brother Prince George, Duke of Kent. Even the undoubtedly stylish Edward later talked about how much they had in common, saying, "Although George was 8.5 years my junior, I found in his character qualities that were akin to my own. We became more than brothers. We became close friends." George attracted equally attractive people to him, including his wife, Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark, whom he once described as a lovely chic creature. Still, he couldn't limit himself to one person, or indeed one gender. George slept with a who's who of 1920s society and may have had at least one illegitimate child. There's also rumor of drug abuse, with legends stating Edward had to forcibly get his brother to stop taking morphine and cocaine. Despite all this, his marriage to Marina was very happy, with the couple often entertaining their famous and titled friends at their lavish home. Tragically, however, George was killed in a plane crash in 1942, just before his 40th birthday. Prince John's life is one of the most tragic stories of the modern royal family. The youngest child of George V, it's thought John may have been autistic, since around 4 years old he began showing certain symptoms, although it's impossible to be sure when diagnosing someone from history. It is known that he suffered from terrible seizures, however. As he got older, things got worse for John. He was isolated away from the rest of the family in one of the many houses on one of their estates. His governess wrote, "We dared not let him be with his brothers and sister because it upsets them so much, with the attacks getting so bad and coming so often." However, his grandmother Alexandra, the Queen Mother, made a garden especially for him to play in, and his parents arranged playdates with local children, some of whom he became close to. Tragically, John died at the age of 13, having suffered a seizure in his sleep. The family's private reactions demonstrated their complicated emotions over the loss of the young boy. King George wrote that his son's passing was, quote, "the greatest mercy possible," while Queen Mary's diary entry records, "It was a great shock, though for the poor little boy's restless soul, death came as a great relief." In 1920, Albert, Duke of York, attended a ball where he met the woman who would be the love of his life, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, daughter of a minor aristocrat. Albert spent the next 2 years courting Elizabeth before he finally asked her to marry him. But Elizabeth took some convincing. While the relationship was destined to be a huge success, he had to ask her 3 times before she agreed. Elizabeth's personality was very different than that of her shy and retiring husband. She was extremely kind and outspoken. In fact, she told Albert once, while turning him down for marriage, that she couldn't be with him because, "I'm afraid never again to be free to think, speak, and act as I feel I really ought to." As she got older, however, Elizabeth's tongue became looser, and she became particularly well known for her many quips. That said, compared to the glamorous Wallis Simpson, the mistress and then wife of her brother-in-law Edward, Elizabeth was more or less ordinary. Despite the cruel nicknames Wallis reportedly had for Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's mark on history would be all the greater. Mother to a very famous daughter of the same name, Elizabeth died in 2002 at the age of 101.
My family and I always knew what she meant for the people of this country, and the special place she occupied in the hearts of so many.
While George V became king after the death of Edward VII in 1910, his mother, Queen Alexandra, lived until 1925. While she was still striking in old age, when Alexandra was younger, she was reportedly stunning. That's not something you can say about a lot of people born into royal families in any time period, but Alexandra apparently was an exception. Basically, everyone who had met Alexandra had to mention how beautiful she was. Her mother-in-law, Queen Victoria, called her a dear lovely being. Meanwhile, her future sister-in-law wrote at length about how stunning she was after meeting her, saying, "She has a lovely figure but very thin, a complexion as beautiful as possible, very fine white regular teeth, and very fine large eyes, with extremely prettily marked eyebrows. Her voice, her walk, carriage, and manner are perfect. She is one of the most ladylike and aristocratic-looking people I ever saw." Alexandra was so glamorous, in fact, that when an illness left her with a pronounced limp, other women started copying the limp, not to make fun of her, but because literally everything that Alexandra did quickly became fashionable. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.